I actually wrote down in my notes, him working for Vance Refrigeration. I think he would be, quote, cool under pressure.
Welcome back to the Substantiate Podcast. I'm the host, William Glasser. This week, I have a special episode with Josh McKinney of the Four Quarters with Josh McKinney podcast. I went on his show a couple weeks ago, back in March, and I've been wanting to do an episode about The Office for some time now, and it finally worked out. So Josh and I are talking about what if The Office had like a company softball game, and although we don't limit our draft picks to Dunder Mifflin employees, we just say Office characters in general, still, you get the concept. It's an Office softball game. And so that's what is in this episode. You can find all of the links to Josh's show and social media down in the show notes. You can find me on Twitter and Instagram at SubstantiatePod, also in the show notes. And before we begin, give me 1 minute to tell you about SeatGeek, the best way to go about buying tickets to a sporting event or a concert. And basically the way SeatGeek works, you go over to SeatGeek.com or download the app and select what event you want to buy a ticket to. And then you're going to see the stadium map pop up, and they've got all kinds of dots. So a big green dot is going to tell you that's a good deal. That's the kind of deal that's like $10 in the front row. Or if it's a red dot, then that's going to be the kind of deal that's going to cost you $1 million, and it's in the last row. So that's SeatGeek in a quick rundown there, and go over, use promo code SubstantiatePod and save yourself $20 on your first purchase at SeatGeek.com. Again, promo code SubstantiatePod for $20 off your first order over at SeatGeek. And now, without much further intro here, let's kick it to my talk with Josh McKinney. Today, I'm joined by Josh McKinney. How are you today, Josh?
Doing well, William. How are you doing?
I'm doing well, too. A couple weeks ago, I was on your podcast, Four Quarters with Josh McKinney. Had a great time. Do you want to tell the listeners a bit about the podcast and what you do for a living?
Yeah, so first of all, what I do for a living is I'm a sports editor here in North Carolina at a local paper. Been in sports writing for about 13 years now, full-time for almost 10. I think it's been about 9 years for that. So big sports fan, of course, and cover a lot of high school and college sports mainly in the area that I'm in. Four Quarters with Josh McKinney. Enjoyed having you on. We did a fun draft on the episode I had you on for Marvel characters, and made 5-player basketball teams with those. That was a lot of fun. I've had a couple episodes since then, but Four Quarters with Josh McKinney you can find pretty much anywhere you get your podcast. And right now I don't have a set schedule. I'm hoping to get my next episode out here around the end of April. I've had a couple episodes since the one you were on. I think you also had former NFL kicker Sean Connolly on your show as well. Yep. I had him on. He's got a great story. And then I had a former NFL and college coach, Evan Burke, was on my most recent episode, which came out earlier in April. I had a lot of great guests, and we do some fun drafts that are similar to what you do here on your show. That's basically it. It's a lot of fun. I have a lot of segments on the show, like Call of the Bullpen is what I call kind of an interview with whoever my guests may be for that day. And This Day in Sports History, where I just talk about different things that happened on that particular day that the episode is released throughout history, and just some other fun segments like that. But Happily Ever Drafter is the fun name for the draft segment. So those are just some of the segments as you can find on Four Quarters.
Yeah. So today we're doing our own draft, and today we're talking about characters from The Office playing softball. So, Josh, when did you start watching The Office? How into it are you?
I actually have my father-in-law is a huge Office fan. He has seen every episode a ton of times. We've got some other people in the family who are huge fans as well. I kind of got into it late in the show's run and didn't really watch it as they were airing live, but then started from the beginning and went back and binge watched them on Netflix. Really enjoy it. I've seen especially the episodes earlier on throughout the first 6 or 7 seasons. I've seen multiple times. Later seasons, maybe not quite as much. Really just love the show. I know the same people who created that show were behind shows like Brooklyn Nine-Nine and The Good Place and Parks and Rec. So all similar. I've seen all of those shows, every episode of all of them, and have enjoyed every one of them. Don't know which I like best, to be honest with you, but I've always loved The Office, and it's just so funny to see the interactions between Jim and Dwight are some of my favorite things. And then, of course, Michael is what hijinks he's up to.
Yeah. So throughout the series, throughout the 9 seasons of The Office, there's a couple episodes here and there where sports are involved. So probably the most notable is season 1 basketball, where the office workers go down to the warehouse to play basketball. And, just in that episode, again, probably one of the more iconic episodes. And, it's still season 1, so not all of the characters are there. But that's really the first time where we get a sense of everyone's background in terms of sports. And later on, we go on one of Michael's birthdays. They go to an ice rink and skate around. Michael's really good at hockey. During the episode Fun Run, they all run a 5K. During company picnic, there's a game of volleyball going on. And then also in season 9, not as much on the playing side, but Jim and Daryl moved to Philadelphia part-time and work at a sports agency. So lots of sports here and there, definitely a lot of stuff to base this draft off of. And that being said, Josh, you're up with the first pick.
All right, so with my first pick, this was probably my easiest choice of the entire thing is I'm going to go with Jim Halpert as my first pick. There are a lot of tall people in The Office, and Jim's certainly one of them. He's 6'3", I believe, and certainly has an athletic history. You talked about the basketball episode, which is one of my favorites, really the best episode of that first season, which was 6 episodes, I believe. Jim has a history with basketball and obviously has the tall, lanky build for a basketball player. I know he's got a little bit of history in soccer, which he's not very good at. Apparently, he's very tall and rangy. I think he could slide into a number of different positions just because of his athletic knowledge. For now, I think I would probably slot him at first base. I think it helps to have a tall guy over there at first, and there's a lot of good choices. There's a lot of good choices from The Office height-wise, but for now I'm going to put Jim at first base.
Yeah, I like that pick there. And, Jim really shines in that basketball episode. And, there's tons of different stereotypes and things going on in that episode that mostly stem from Michael. And Jim, throughout the series, he's kind of reluctant in a lot of things to participate. But in that basketball game, that's one of the rare times where he's giving it his all. He's really trying hard, playing well, and succeeding. And I think not a coincidence, but in that episode, Pam is on the sidelines, sort of cheering him on, even though he's playing against her fiance, Roy.
Yeah, absolutely.
So that brings me to my first pick, and I think Jim, is kind of the consensus number 1. And for pick number 2 here, I'm going into the warehouse, and his biggest rival in that game, I'm going with Roy. And that's a pick. It's probably a controversial pick, but he's a big guy. He's athletic. He's probably the next most athletic there. And he's someone that, I think he might work as a catcher. I think he can probably hit for power and, just be someone sturdy there, definitely competitive. And, obviously he turns into a kind of up and down character throughout the series, different kinds of things. But at the beginning, he's pretty stable, and at the end, he's also pretty stable. So I think that he's going to add a competitive spirit to the team.
I think that's a very nice number one pick for you. And, of course, with he and Jim kind of having their little rivalry over the years, I think that's a great pick to go against my Jim pick. And, of course, obviously Roy grew up a lot during the series and matured, and they got past the whole Pam thing. But Roy's a 6'4" guy and a very good athlete for sure.
Yeah. All right, so we're moving on to your second pick.
All right, so with my second pick, I'm going to go ahead and grab me a catcher as well, and I'm going to go with Dwight Schrute there behind the backstop. Another tall guy, 6'2", but very physical, of course, has a martial arts love of that, and just think he would be willing to get down and dirty back there behind the plate. You remember him from the basketball episode wearing a mask, a la Rip Hamilton, and just going all out. And maybe not the greatest player, but out there just playing hard. And I think that's what you need for a catcher, is a guy who's willing to just go at it back there.
Yeah, and, that's someone that's definitely going to play dirty, which is kind of what you want as a catcher there. I mean, I think it was not that many days ago now, Luke Voigt of the San Diego Padres, I want to say they were playing the Phillies, and he's sliding into home and kind of did one of the old-fashioned, not really slide, more kind of ram the catcher, and I think it was the catcher said that it was effed up, but, I mean, it's just hard baseball, and out here on the baseball diamond, I'm not sure that they're on the softball diamond. I'm not sure what the umpire situation is, so Dwight's a good pick there.
Yeah.
So I'm going to, I guess you could say, sort of stay on the Jim's rivals train, and I'm drafting Charles here. And I think I'm going to have him as a middle infielder, maybe shortstop or second base, yet to be determined. But he's a guy, we see him, he plays soccer, he's an athletic guy, and, again, he seems like the kind of up-spirit guy, competitive. We also see him in Company Picnic. He's out there playing volleyball, again, against Jim and the rest of the Scranton branch. Yeah, I think he's got good athleticism there.
Very nice. I like that pick. With my next pick, I'm also going to look at the middle infield here, and I'm going to go with the guy who is actually named after a baseball player, that being Ryan Howard. And I'm going to go ahead and place him in the middle infield. Not sure second or shortstop there just yet, but he's a small guy. I think he's the perfect size for a middle infielder. I think he's 5'8", about 150 pounds, which seems perfect for that. And like I said, named after he had his best years with the Philadelphia Phillies there with Ryan Howard, of course, going up against my Atlanta Braves for many years and kind of terrorizing us a little bit. Of course, he shows up in an episode of The Office late in the series there as well. So I'll go with Ryan Howard, and part of that just because his name is after a baseball player.
Yeah, Ryan there. Again, another kind of, I guess, inconsistent character throughout the series in terms of how stable he is. He winds up getting arrested after making it to corporate and is back in Scranton again as a temp and through Michael Scott Paper Company, and there's so much stuff going on. And eventually, though, he lands back on his feet again in the Scranton branch. And yeah, he's another kind of smaller guy that I would agree you kind of associate with the middle infield there. So that's going to lead me into my third pick. I'm going back to the office now, and I am drafting Andy Bernard as my center fielder. I think that Andy can be a good center fielder. In Fun Run, he says that he's walked 2 marathons, so he's got endurance. He can run out there, and we'll try to utilize his speed out there in center field as well as on the base paths. Get on, maybe some hit and run action, but I think he's someone out there that, maybe not the most athletic necessarily or most coordinated, but I think he's the best pick there.
Yeah, just hope he doesn't go in the dugout and punch a wall or something. Guys have been known to do that in baseball as well. And, of course, Andy with his past anger issues. But I love that character. He was a lot of fun.
Da-na-na, da-na-na. Well, we've got some breaking news here on the Substantiate podcast. Built Bar, the best protein bar on the market. Honestly, it kind of tastes like a candy bar, but it's really healthy for you. They have just come out with a brand new granola bar. These things have 15 grams of protein, and it's granola. And they've got 3 flavors right now. They've got chocolate, coconut, white chocolate berry, and chocolate peanut butter. And those range from 4 to 7 grams of sugar and just about 160 calories there. And obviously that's all in addition to their Built bars. They've got the Built Puffs, which are literally protein-infused marshmallows. They have yellow chirps still left over from Easter. They have mint marshmallow puffs, coconut marshmallow, churro marshmallow. That's one of my favorites, as well as the usuals, the double chocolate regular bar, mint brownie, peanut butter brownie, cookies and cream, coconut almond, all kinds of things. They've got all kinds of protein bars in the nut and not nut variety. And some exciting news, they're actually in Sam's Clubs now across the country, but it's only a few flavors there. So if you want to get a bar, see if you like it, go over to Sam's Club and then come back online to built.com and you can use code substantiate. Save yourself 10% off your order online. So they also have more flavors online than in the Sam's Clubs. But yeah, so exciting news with the Built granola bars.
Okay, pick number 4. Trying to decide here as you were making yours where I would want to go with this. I think I'm going to go to the warehouse, and I'm going to go with Daryl Philbin, another tall guy. Once again, 6'2", and I think he could play a number of different positions. But I'm going to go ahead and put him out there in right field. I just, for some reason, I think Daryl would be kind of your prototypical softball player for like an older men's league, and I think he might have a pretty good arm, certainly a better arm than some of the others in the office or the warehouse. I just think Daryl teamed with Jim, that gives me 2 really good athletes. So yeah, I like Daryl here.
Yeah, Daryl, again, just like I was mentioning before with Jim, he was one of them that went to Philadelphia for that sports agency where they wind up meeting Ryan Howard, the real Ryan Howard. And yeah, just another guy there that just loves sports. We see in, I think it's season 8, or it's just one of the Halloween episodes, we have Daryl and Kevin and Jim dress up as the big 3, being the Miami big 3, yep. LeBron, Chris Bosh, and D Wade. And yeah, so I think that's a good pick there. Another guy with athletic backgrounds. All right, so my next pick is Bob Vance, and Vance Refrigeration. And so Bob Vance there, I think that he's the kind of guy that would just tear it up in like a company softball game. And although he's not from the Dunder Mifflin side of things. He's still a guy that, I think putting him over there at first base, that, he can be a good enough fielder to catch the ball when it's thrown to him at first and be able to hit for some kind of power there.
Yeah, and Bob Vance was actually somebody I was considering taking right with my next pick. So that's great for you to grab him there before I could. He's another 6'4" guy, and I actually wrote down in my notes, him working for Vance Refrigeration. I think he would be, quote, cool under pressure. So I think Bob Vance is a great pick for a softball team. My next pick then is going to be a guy who did not get drafted in the basketball episode of The Office. And, people thought, he's slow. He's not very bright. But after everybody left, he's just out there draining every shot that he takes. And that's Kevin Malone. He's just a guy who I think sometimes surprises you with, and I think maybe in softball he could surprise you as well with how good he is. Now, I am actually going to make a change with my lineup, and I'm going to put Kevin at first base where I had Jim. I'm going to slide Jim across to third base, so I think he would fit in perfectly there on either corner infield position. But Kevin is just a guy who I think would surprise you, as I said. I think he could, and I think first base is the best place for him. He's just over 6 feet tall and may not have the ability to stretch out as much as Jim would there, but I would rather have Jim at third base than Kevin at third base. So I'll go with Kevin at first.
Yeah. So now I'm going with, I don't know, maybe it's a less conventional pick because, there's that kind of stigma in the office with the lazier people. You've got Kevin, you've got Stanley, Phyllis, even Jim in that category to some extent, although Jim certainly has more athletic abilities. However, in one of the episodes, Phyllis mentions that, or I think it was, it was Pam mentions. Okay, so scrap that about the lazy part because Pam isn't quite as lazy. But Pam mentions that she played college volleyball, and so she definitely has athletic backgrounds there. And I think she is someone that I can slot in as that other middle infielder position beside Charles. So probably can put Charles at short and Pam at second. And this kind of shakes up because now Roy and Pam are on my team and you've got Jim on your team, and this kind of adds to the whole dynamic there.
Yeah, very interesting thing you added there. I was also considering Pam for my next pick, and I think she's perfect for middle infield. Now, I wrote down both Pam and the other receptionist, Erin, on my list, and I wrote down that receptionists need to be reliable, dependable, and they need to be accurate, so error-free out on the field. And they need to have good communication skills. So I think that's perfect for a middle infielder. I'm going to put Erin, since you took Pam, I'll take Erin and put her actually at second base as well. And so that'll slot Ryan at shortstop and complete my infield there, except for the pitcher.
Yeah, and I think she's another person there that's not afraid to play dirty. I think she's going to go out there, give it her all, play it tough. And there's some cases where she doesn't pick up every social cue. However, with that, she's always striving to be her best. At some points, she's worried about getting fired. So she always has some kind of motivation there to keep her going. So now with my next pick, I hadn't scrolled up far enough on my page. I thought I knew what I was talking about, and I sort of did. So Phyllis, she did mention that she played high school basketball. So again, maybe a bit of an athletic background there. And although I think we do see her in the basketball episode. She doesn't necessarily shine, and she's not the greatest player. But I think that if I slot her in there in left field, that she can, do the job. She can hit the ball and field competently.
Yeah, that's definitely where you want maybe someone who isn't your best fielder. For instance, that's where the Braves have Marcell Ozuna when he's in the field, and he's not very good at all out there. Yeah, I think Phyllis is a good choice for left field. That's the perfect spot if you're going to draft someone like a Phyllis.
Yeah.
So I mentioned that I didn't have a pitcher yet. I'm going to choose somebody who I feel like, I don't know that it's ever mentioned on the show. I don't think it is. But I feel like she might have a softball background, possibly. She looks like maybe your prototypical softball pitcher, Jan Levinson. Mm-hmm. I'm going to go with her on the mound. I considered, earlier I said Jim could play so many positions, and you could certainly see him pitching. He could be a potential guy who I have come in relief if Jan got into some trouble. But I do feel like Jan, she's kind of the alpha female there for a while, and people were intimidated by her, and I think she could bring that presence to the mound.
Yeah, I think that can be a good pick there. With Jan, she's kind of all over the place, and, that's not always what you want from a pitcher, but at the same time, all over the place. Like, there's plenty of emotional pitchers out there that do all kinds of crazy things. Like, you hear about pitchers like day of a start routine, and some of them are pretty crazy. It's like, they'll just have the headphones on, don't go up to them, don't say anything, they're in their zone. I mean, on opening day, Garrett Cole, Billy Crystal was throwing out the first pitch at the Yankees game, and so first pitch was delayed 4 minutes, and Garrett Cole was going nuts because, his routine was off by 4 minutes. And, it's that kind of thing there that, sometimes pitchers are irrational to some extent and a bit all over the place.
Yep. Sometimes it works out to your detriment, and sometimes it works out in your favor, for sure.
So with my next pick, I am drafting Oscar Martinez. And when we think about the way that baseball has gone over the last 20 years, and it's just become so analytical, and, this is a company softball game, so, it's not a big deal, but still having someone there that's rooted in reality, Oscar, maybe the most, just realist person there is in the office. Someone that, we never really see his athletic abilities. He's kind of short, so not that there aren't good short baseball players like Jose Altuve, but, at the same time, I think that his brain will be a large asset to the team, and I am also slotting him in there at pitcher.
Okay. That's going to be an interesting pitching matchup to watch for sure. Okay, so I'm going to go back to the outfield. I still have a couple slots to fill out there, and I'm going to go to center field with my next pick, and I'm going to pick David Minor, which is, of course, played by Idris Elba on the show. I think he would have some athleticism for sure out there. I think he could go get the ball.
I think you're thinking of Charles
Minor, that's correct.
Yeah,
yes.
He's already my shortstop, so.
That's right. Let me make sure I was thinking of the right person.
David Wallace, maybe, is what you were thinking of?
I had him written down, too. Yeah, that's right. It is Charles Minor, isn't it? Okay, I will go then. Let's see. I will go then with Pete Miller and put him out there in center field then. He was jokingly the new Jim. I think he would have some athleticism. He's younger and could just go out there and get the ball just as maybe a Charles Minor. It's Charles Minor, not David Minor. Could get. I think I put him and David Wallace together there for some reason.
Yeah, and you said center field for Pete,
yes.
Right?
Yes.
Yeah, and he's kind of another character there. He and Clark just the two guys added in the final season. It was a little strange, but, just having that bit of new life there and someone that hasn't seen it all, like, at certain parts of the series, we see when characters are a bit depressed, like in the point where it's like after Jim tries to do everyone's birthday party as one big birthday party, and Michael's telling him, like, oh yeah, I tried that once, big mistake, and they're laughing, and he's like,
so what did I miss?
Well, I tried to put all the birthdays together at once.
Oh.
So, terrible idea.
Yeah, okay, I did that. Rookie mistake.
You did do it?
Uh-huh, yeah. Just wait. 10 years, you'll figure it out.
Well, I don't think I'll be here in 10 years, but...
That's what I said.
And like we were talking about a bit before we started, and you mentioned Freddie Freeman being out in LA, and you're a big Braves fan, and how Matt Olson has been playing well so far this season. And sometimes you kind of need that new blood in there, that new life. You hear it talked about a lot of times with basketball and how, but really it applies to every sport, and how it's so hard to win back-to-back championships. And so, getting some of that just new life in there, I think that'll be good for your team.
Yeah, for sure. I think I got where I got messed up is the fact that I forgot that Charles Minor kind of started in the warehouse there, and then he moves into a bigger role somewhere else. So I don't know. I got a little confused there with those characters, but I think Pete Miller would give me a good young person to have out there on the team.
Yeah. All right. So now moving on to my next pick. And so far, right, we've mostly stuck to corporate and The Office, with the exception of Bob Vance. And in this case, I'm going a little bit more different, but I guess still sort of corporate. But I'm going with Jo Bennett here. So she's the CEO of Sabre. She's an accomplished woman. She always walks around with, I think it's Dalmatians. She's always got 2 Dalmatians there. And, she's someone that's also going to play dirty. She's going to play tough. And, she's going to be a capable player out there on the field. And I'm slotting her in at third base. At third base, you want someone that's strong, that can make the throw across the diamond to first base. It's a far throw. And so I think that having Jo there at third to clean up my other corner infield position, she's not going to have her dogs there, but she's a bit closer to the foul line, so maybe they're out in the stands in a bleacher. But yeah, so Jo at third base.
All right. And if she did decide to bring her dogs, it could be Bark in the Park Day there for the softball game. So I think this is the perfect spot for the person I'm going to draft. And you hit Phyllis out in left field earlier there with maybe a weaker arm. This guy would certainly want to play, and that's Michael Scott. He's going to go out there in left field. I would hide him out there. He's my last draft pick. So kind of perfect for Michael because he's not going to be the best, but he's certainly going to try. As you saw in the basketball game, he's just throwing up brick after brick, but he's trying hard. And he's going to try to do the best he can with what he's got. And he's going to make things fun for sure.
Yeah, and I think that he'll be good on the base paths. He's probably an okay hitter, but he's probably got some speed there. Hopefully he doesn't carbo load before the game like he does in Fun Run, eating I think he eats fettuccine Alfredo, and he's like, that was the most fettuccine Alfredo and the least water I've ever had in my entire life. And, starts to throw up at the end of the 5K there. But I can sort of see Michael in left field going 2 ways. It's either perfect because he's out of the way, or it's horrible because he's going to run into the infield because he just wants to be a part of it so badly that he's just hovering over the infield. And then all of a sudden, Roy comes up to the plate, or Bob Vance comes up to the plate and bombs one over his head.
Interestingly enough, I had chicken Alfredo for lunch today, so totally off topic. But
well, fortunately, you don't have to go out and run a 5K now.
No, I do not.
To end rabies, the disease that had already been cured. My last position here is right field. I need someone out there, and I was thinking about going with Toby because, he climbed that fence and ran over it before he announced he was moving to, where was it? I think Puerto Rico or somewhere in the Caribbean. And, so I think he would be fine athletically, but yeah, kind of suck the life out of this team. And I've got some strong personalities on here between Roy and Andy and Bob Vance. Although actually I didn't even realize until now I have Bob Vance and Phyllis. So hopefully there's no bathrooms around or anything because they might disappear for a little while. But yeah, I guess they'll be far enough away from each other on the field, left field and first base. But yeah, so with my last pick here for right field, I am going with Angela Martin. And, she's the kind of person that, is going to be kind of disgusted with it all. But at the same time, she's someone out there. If she's committed, she'll give it her all. Just like Oscar, she's got the intelligence. She still has some kind of relationship with Andy, depending on where in the season we're talking about. She's got some relationship with Oscar because they work together in the accounting department. And I think they'll be able to work through it, and she'll take control at the plate because that's something she likes to do. So she'll seize the opportunity in her at-bats.
Yeah, and Angela may be somebody who you could bring in as a relief pitcher as well because she would probably take great pride in striking people out and making them look bad. And she may be a smaller person out there, and I cover a lot of high school softball and see some smaller girls out there who can just strike out the other team, so maybe she'd surprise you there.
Yeah, anything can happen, really. And some honorable mentions, if you will, that get left out of this team. There's D'Angelo Vickers, played by Will Ferrell, who comes in to replace Michael Scott for like 4 episodes and then gets injured and not hired. But also David Wallace we mentioned there. Either one of them may have been able to be a good player. Gabe, he may have been able to play well. Some other office members, Stanley Hudson, Meredith, as well as Creed, and we also mentioned Toby. I mean, what would Creed look like out there playing softball?
I don't know. I actually, I think Creed might be better used as a coach, and he's very intimidating, scares people, and I think I think fear can be a powerful motivator. So Creed might be better served as a coach because he's a little older there, and I don't know how he'd get around.
Yeah, I think Creed might be the funniest character on The Office because he doesn't have that many lines. He doesn't have a huge part in the series, but when he does say something, it's usually pretty funny. Like on the Halloween episode, he shows up with a lot of blood on his shirt, and at one point he's like,
I didn't realize that everybody here dresses up every year.
Me neither. It's Halloween. That is really, really good timing.
Where he had clearly gone and done something to get blood on his shirt.
Yeah,
but
that's the first scene I think of when I think of Creed for sure.
And then there's I've been a part of many cults, both as a follower and a leader.
I've been involved in a number of cults, both as a leader and a follower. You have more fun as a follower, but you make more money as a leader.
Absolutely.
Yeah. So maybe he, as the leader of a team, would be a good coach there as well, but I'm not sure he's making any more money off of it. Well, there is never really a dull moment in sports right now. The NFL draft starting Thursday night, going through to day 3 being on Saturday. And it's never a bad time to go out and buy a shirt or jersey from your favorite NFL teams. The top picks, you got the Lions, the Jacksonville Jaguars, you got the Jets and the Giants up there, the Detroit Lions. A lot of not great teams, but then there's also the good teams back at the end of each round. And to get a shirt or a jersey to any of your favorite NFL teams, or for that matter, an MLB team, an NBA team, NHL, as the NBA and NHL playoffs are in full swing. Well, the NBA, the NHL starting soon, and even for your favorite college. Maybe you want to get a shirt or hat from the college that your new draft pick went to. And to get all of that, you can go over to one place, fanatics.com. Bit of a one-stop shop there for all things sports apparel. You can find it there, fanatics.com. I've got a link to it down in the show notes. Easy to get to for you. And yeah, so it's never a dull moment in sports. So you always want to have the right shirt or hat to wear while it's going on. All right, so coming into it here to look at these two teams, they're out there on the field. And who is a player or two that you're going to be keeping your eyes on out there that, you know, if they play well, that really gives your team an advantage, or if they play well, for me, that would give me an advantage?
Well, I definitely think, as we mentioned, Jan's kind of a wild card there at pitcher, and she could kind of make or break things for me. Am I going to be sending in Jim or somebody to try to save the day there in the circle, or is she going to pitch really well? I mean, she could turn it one way or the other very easily for me, and so I think she's one to watch for sure. And I think Jim's going to be solid for me. I think Dwight's going to play hard and do good things. Daryl for sure. Kevin, as well, as I said, could surprise you. I hope he would be a good surprise there over first base. I think that's the best spot for him. So I got a couple of wild cards there, but if things go well, I think they could do some good things.
Yeah, and I think when you look down each of our lineups or draft orders, because I guess we didn't technically set a lineup for this, but when you have players out there like Jim and Ryan and Daryl, I think those are going to be your consistent players. Even Dwight out there, we see it in the basketball game. Dwight plays surprisingly well in the basketball game, like shockingly well. So I think he could even be in there. And then towards the bottom of your lineup, I think Pete. I think that was a good sleeper pick there. And Michael, I mean, who knows with Michael? So I think you've got like 5 solid players there. And then on my team, Roy, Charles, Bob, I think those are the real solid players. And then you've got Andy in that next tier probably, still a good player. And as well as, we'll see what Oscar can bring to the table and as a pitcher. And then when we start to look towards the bottom of each lineup, and you've got Aaron there and Michael and Kevin, and I have Angela and Joe and Phyllis and Pam, where do you see that bottom of the lineup? Is there a player or two there that you think will be a coming out stud there?
I'm going to go with Pete. I think out there in center field, as I said, he's a younger guy. I think he might surprise you and probably going to have more speed than a lot of the players in this game, and maybe could lay down a bunt and run it out there, especially I don't know how good Joe's going to be over there at third base for you, so maybe he lays one down the third base line and can beat it out. And it's going to be interesting to watch some of these people on the base pass, but I think Pete would do well there and could get on and maybe create some havoc, steal some bases for me as well.
Yeah. And also, what about the team dynamics here when you've got Jim and Dwight and Ryan and Daryl? Throughout the series, they each are friends, and as well as Jan and Michael on the same team. And then on my team, we've also got the Roy and Pam, and Charles is also here, and going up against Jim, and so there's tons of different things here. What do you think might be a predominant storyline or two that is going to be a defining factor in this game?
It's definitely a good thing that I've got Michael out in left field far away from Jan, because that could be a bit of a problem for sure. I think Jim and Dwight work well together when they need to, as they've shown on the show. And even though Jim with the pranks and everything with Dwight, but Dwight's going to be playing hard. He's going to try to impress his boss, Michael, at all times. So I think that would be another big motivator for him. On your team, I just keep looking at Bob Vance. I think that was a great pick. Maybe one of the steals of the draft there. You picked him fourth, and I think he's probably a perfect cleanup hitter somewhere in there. Him and Roy there in the heart of your lineup could potentially go some long balls there in the game. And of course, him and Phyllis, he could maybe help, obviously, as you said, no bathrooms hopefully nearby, but you've got them about as far away from each other at first and left as you could get them. Pam and Roy, I think, have matured to the point where by the end of the series, if that's when they're playing the game, then they would be able to work together and at least coexist on the same team. And Angela's kind of one of your big wild cards there to see what she's going to do, and Oscar as well on the mound.
Yeah. You have Jim slotted in there at third base. And usually when we think of fielding, we think about wanting a strong middle of the field, so being second, short, and center, as well as pitcher and catcher for that matter. So what influenced your decision to put Jim at third base?
I think more than anything, maybe his height. I wanted a little bit shorter guy there in the middle. I did, like I said, I think Jim could play in a number of different positions, and shortstop I thought of. But I just thought he would fit in better there at the hot corner. Maybe some, I think you're going to have some pull hitters there with Bob Vance, with Roy. And I think Jim will do great over there handling those hot grounders, maybe if those guys try to pull the ball that way.
Yeah, and I mean, when you think about third basemen in the league, there's all kinds of third basemen. Like, you've got your Pablo Sandoval type, your bigger guys, but, they've got the reaction time. And, Pablo Sandoval wasn't the greatest fielder, but, he was still out there, and he was sharp enough, I guess, for most of his career at least. And then you've got like your Josh Donaldsons or your Nolan Arenados, some, I guess, smaller, more fit guys just with really strong arms. And so what category of third baseman do you think Jim would most fit into?
Not really sure. I think he's probably not going to be just spectacular in the field. Like I said, I had him originally at first base in this draft just because of his reach. But once I got Kevin, I just thought it was best to move him over there. Now, what do I do? Jim would probably be my relief pitcher coming in. So be interesting to see who I put over there at third if I did that. If I was to move him pitcher, I guess Jan maybe they just make a swap there. A lot of times your pitchers in softball games, as I've been covering them in high school, will go over to shortstop or third base or something and play over there because they're usually one of the better athletes on the team. And like I said, something tells me Jen maybe has a little bit of experience playing softball, even though it's never meant at all. It seems like she maybe could have that.
Yeah. Again, coming back to the bigger picture here, which team do you think has a higher ceiling and which has a higher floor? So the maximum if everyone plays perfectly, and, well, what if everyone doesn't play perfectly?
So I really like your team. I think you're going to probably obviously have Charles, Roy, and Bob there probably in your 2, 3, 4 or 3, 4, 5 positions in the batting order. You may have Andy up there in leadoff, or up near the top. Pam maybe up there as well. I think your team could really hit some long balls, I've said, and they've got several guys in there who could do that. Phyllis might surprise you. I mean, she's probably got some power. She's probably got some power behind her. She gets a hold of one, and so maybe she surprises you there. And Oscar, I didn't even really consider Oscar much for my team. He's got a great baseball name, but I think he could be surprising as well. I think our pitching matchup is one of the most interesting things that we're going to be watching this game. I mean, I think your team has more power in the lineup. I think I would probably, if I had to pick a leadoff hitter, maybe Ryan, maybe Pete up there. And Jim is going to be either second or third. I've seen a lot of teams going to where they're moving guys up that used to hit third to second now, just to maybe get them more at bats. So I might put Jim there in the second spot, and then maybe you go either Pete or Ryan in third, whichever one's not leading off. Go with Daryl there in the cleanup spot, Kevin at fifth, and I've got a chance to do some good things there if they can get on base there. At the top of the lineup, but that's kind of how I would probably fill them out there.
Yeah, and when you talk about like moving a player up in the lineup to get more at-bats rather than like batting cleanup, for example, like my biggest issue with that is always, well, the only time where that comes into play is going to be the 9th inning or extra innings. So in that case, right, if you're bumping your best player up from the 3rd spot to the 2nd or from 4 to 3. And, you still have to consider, well, how is this going to look in the 1st inning? And in that scenario, how does it look in the last inning? So, I mean, sometimes I think it's a little short-sighted to just say, well, on average, the person batting second in the lineup gets 50 more at-bats a year than batting third. And it's like, okay, but it's a little more nuanced to that. But yeah, I mean, definitely different combinations you can go here. So ultimately, though, who did you think had the higher ceiling?
I think your team probably has the higher ceiling. Like I said, I just think I think everything goes right. I think you've got a lot of power there. You're going to put up some runs, and my team's probably going to have to play more small ball. So I think that gives you a little bit of a higher ceiling.
Yeah, and I think you still, though, have the higher floor, because when you look at, when I was listing before your consistent players, you've got Jim and Dwight and Ryan and Daryl and Pete, whereas, I still have consistent players, but Roy, Charles, Bob, and, we'll see what we get from Andy and Phyllis and Oscar. So we'll see how this all plays out. But, yeah, I mean, baseball or softball is the kind of sport where, like they say in the playoffs in baseball, it's a crapshoot. So on any given day, anything can happen. And do you have any last thoughts about these two teams?
My last thoughts are just this was a lot of fun. I think an office softball game is a very popular thing that goes on, and offices put together softball teams to be in leagues, and so it was kind of the perfect show to do this sport with. And I'm a huge Office fan, and Jim's always been my favorite just because I think he's the most kind of like me, a little quieter, but has a funny side to him, and I just I really like these characters a lot from this show, and it would be fun to watch them go out there on the diamond and see how they do.
Definitely. So, again, before we sign off here, do you want to remind the listeners where they can find you on social media and your podcast?
Yeah, so like I said, 4 Quarters with Josh McKinney. As of right now, don't really have a set schedule for shows, trying to get back on that. But next show probably coming out later here in April. And you can find it anywhere you get your podcast. You can follow me on Twitter at SuperJMac32, and that's the numbers 32 there at the end. And I'll update you about when my next episodes will be. I'll have the links to those as well there. And also on Facebook, just look for 4 Quarters with Josh McKinney there, and I'll let you know when new episodes are coming out.
Yep, and you can scroll down to the show notes. All those links are right there under Josh's name when you're listening to this. So thanks again, Josh.
Thanks for having me, William. Really enjoyed it.
Hope you enjoyed that episode of the Substantiate Podcast. You can share this episode with a friend. You could send them the link to our website, www.substantiatepod.com. Or you can recommend this episode or your favorite episode. And there's just so many ways that you can get in touch with Josh or myself. All those links down in the show notes, social media for both of us. And yeah, so come back here again in another 2 weeks. This episode is released on April 27th, making the next episode May 11th, and I can tell you that one is going to be a good episode. In the week or 2 weeks after that, on May 25th, I am previewing the match with 2 guys that know golf pretty well. They also know the NFL pretty well, so they were going to be perfect to preview the match, obviously, this time where Tom Brady and Aaron Rodgers are teaming up to take on the young AFC quarterbacks of Josh Allen and Patrick Mahomes out there in northern Las Vegas. So we're going to preview that for you and also kind of walk through the hypothetical matchup of it, who we each think will win, both based off of previous golf performances and just based on their qualities as a quarterback. You can go check out some of our previous golf shows, things like Barry Sanders versus Walter Payton playing golf. You can find that. So tons of stuff coming the way in the month of May, so stay tuned because it's going to be a good one. Thank you for listening to this episode of Substantiate. The best way to help support the show is to, number 1, tell your friends about Substantiate. That is the number 1 way to support us. The second way is to leave us a 5-star review in Apple Podcasts or Podchaser. Number 3, follow us at SubstantiatePod on Twitter, Instagram, and Facebook.
Hello, I'm Anthony.
And I'm Dr. Issues.
And we're hosts of Capes on the Couch, the podcast where comics get counseling.
Superheroes don't always get to go home happy. That's where we come in.
We offer psychiatric and mental health analysis of comic book characters.
So check us out at capesonthecouch.live and across all social media platforms at Capes on the Couch.